25% tariffs, that's nuts. How can we do that? But it's conditional, and that's the key. He's actually doing what Canadians have been asking our current federal government to do for almost 4 years. Get immigration under control. He's saying, get the drug issue out of Canada cleaned up, get the immigration crossing borders cleaned up. And so to me, it's a conditional kind of negotiation. The problem that we've got is we've literally got Trudeau and Freeland saying,
well, let's negotiate.
But they've got nothing to negotiate on. They're incompetent, and Trump knows that.
The pipeline is another fantastic question. It's a question a lot of people are asking us. Hey, what's going to happen with the pipeline? Is it, I believe Trump said he would sign it back into existence. Yeah. Even though he clears the way for it, that doesn't necessarily mean at all that someone's still going to build this thing. There's quite a bit of risk in there, and they've already wasted hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars. Will they do more? Let's jump to what I feel like we're going to talk, especially from now until early January, mid-January, late January. We're going to talk about Trump all the friggin' time. My gosh, is it dominating the headlines. And you know what? First, before we talk about the tariffs, which is scaring the crap out of everybody right now, I want to talk about those and kind of put people's minds at ease in a sense, or at least have the discussion. But I think before we get there, it's important for people to realize, Patrick, as you and I very well know, and they also know, that this is what the media does. They are going to take every word that comes out of Trump's mouth and they're going to spin it to the advantage of getting clicks, getting eyeballs. And that means they're going to spin up bad news like crazy about all things Trump between now and, until forever, because that's just how the media is wired. The media exists in order to get your eyeballs. And to do that, they have to spin up bad news. And my gosh, they are just doing a phenomenal job of it right now, because they are scaring everybody with these damn tariffs.
Well, it is interesting, isn't it? And listen, for face value, if you just look at the headlines, 25% tariff on anything coming out of Canada into the U.S., he's suggesting that with Mexico and as well as China. Now, from my perspective, you have to lift the hood on that because, 25% tariffs, that's nuts. How can we do that? But it's conditional, and that's the key. He's actually doing what Canadians have been asking our current federal government to do for almost 4 years. Get immigration under control, because who we've got coming into this country is not who we think it is. Number one, it's out of control. They don't know what they're doing in terms of, and they don't understand who's even coming in. And that's a whole different conversation. And then he's saying, get the fentanyl and the drug issue handled. But here in Canada, we've legalized drugs. Fentanyl becomes a place, and Canada's become a place where we're manufacturing fentanyl. And so that's Trump's stand. He's saying, get the drug issue out of Canada cleaned up, get the immigration crossing borders cleaned up. And so to me, it's a conditional kind of negotiation, and the negotiation is around 25% tariff. And he's saying, get it cleaned up or you're going to pay the price for it. Now, the interesting part of that is that when you listen to the president of Mexico, I think president of Mexico is the right title for her. But anyways, ultimately, she isn't pushing back, but she's saying, okay, I understand what you're saying, but here's what Mexico has done. We've done this and this and this, and the immigration is, we're not having immigration or drug issues that you're having in the U.S. So all to say that she is very adept and very skilled in her negotiation, in her stand that she can take. The problem that we've got is we've literally got Trudeau and Freeland saying, let's negotiate, but they've got nothing to negotiate on. They're incompetent, and Trump knows that. So at the end of the day, what we're going to have to go through the pain of waiting for Trump to get punted, or get Trudeau get punted, and then Poilievre steps in with a plan. And I've listened to Poilievre's plan; it's pretty solid. And we have.
What is his plan, Patrick? Can you speak a couple highlights of it? Because I haven't heard that part yet.
Well, first and foremost, he's going to drop the carbon tax. That's part of his plan. Secondly, he's going to speak to the immigration issues and get immigration back under control. And again, we come back to the legalization of all the street drugs that we have. And you and I talked about this on the weekend, where in British Columbia, you can literally walk up to a vending machine and get heroin. Like it's just crazy what's going on. And many people don't even realize that. So the point of it is that Poilievre's coming in and I encourage people to listen to don't just read the headlines, look and unpack the conversation or the statements that are being made, because they're so misleading. Some of them are outright not true. So, for example, with the immigration, Trudeau finally he sits down and goes, we may have got a little get carried away. That's not his languaging, by the way, but that's how he tried to position it. It's like, yeah, we needed immigration and we turned on the taps and maybe we overdid it. So we're going to pull it back. Now, here's what's interesting about that, JG. 4.9 million immigrants into this country. Their visas come due in about a year from now, some December 2025. So when asked and when pushed, okay, so what are you going to do in the visa renewal? He says, well, people will leave on their own. Literally, that's what he said. It's going to be self-regulating. No worries. Those 4.9 people are going to leave the country. We don't have to try and control it. And it's asinine. Like, it's absolutely, I don't even know where to go with the conversation. So it's all to say this. Some number of those individuals will in fact leave on their own because they're getting out of the country because they literally can't afford to live here. The visas will expire. But I know historically with government, they'll just change the visa status. So right now it's much ado about nothing. It's just headlines. We can sit back and watch it. But these are issues that are coming up that we have to look at. And this goes back to Trump's 25% tariffs. We have to get immigration under control and consider who's coming into this country. Forget about the volume of people coming into this country. Who is coming into this country? What are their skills? What are they going to be in terms of a contribution to our productivity, which is absolutely in the tank? And so these are all things that are happening. And sadly, what's happening in terms of the data that's showing up is that many people that are leaving Canada are the skilled immigrants. They're going, I can't get a job here. I can't afford to live here. So we're losing skilled immigrants. Here's the problem. We'll call them the criminals, the shady side of our immigration. They're staying here. And do you know why they're staying here, JG?
Tell me.
Because their country won't take them back.
Yes.
So there's a quality of people coming into this country. These are all frustrating things. So these are topics, they're topical. We need to, unpack, lift the hood on these conversations so that we're not just reading headlines and get to what it is. To your point earlier, which I think is really important for everybody, it is what it is. We can't control certain things. We can certainly get fired up about it, ask me. But ultimately, I have to come back to, okay, what is my strategy? What is my thesis? What am I going to execute on? And that is, within these market conditions, we're seeing opportunity. Wealth preservation is critical. Make no mistake, the dollar is decoupling and it will take years to happen, but we have to stay ahead of it. You can't deny that it's happening and ignore it, because it will bite you in the end.
I think there's going to be an absolute plethora of these kinds of headlines regarding Trump, regarding his plans. And there's no doubt he's going to come out. He's going to do some things. They're going to be big and bold. We know that. There's no doubt about that. But I do agree, Patrick, that we need to have the right people on our side that are going to negotiate, that are going to talk, that are going to discuss. Because the pipeline is another fantastic question. It's a question a lot of people are asking us. Hey, what's going to happen with the pipeline? Is it, I believe Trump said he would sign it back into existence, right, on day one. I think that's what he said. But who knows? This may be he wants this oil. There's no doubt about that. He wants this oil. We want to sell it to him. Is this going to be part of that negotiation? That remains to be seen.
Well, there's a couple things around the pipeline that, people don't understand is that, so first off, we go ahead with the pipeline, and a lot of money was spent by, these large oil companies to get this pipeline going because it was all a go. Obama came in, he shut it down. Trump comes in, gets it fired back up again. Biden comes in, shuts it down. All to say this is that Keystone is in parts and pieces. Some of it's even been repurposed. So here's the challenge that is going to have to be dealt with. And that is, if in order to get Keystone fired up again, it's going to cost many billions of dollars, and it's going to take time. So any of the oil companies that are going to be asked to do that, for example, let's repair the damage done. Let's, redo what we undid and get things fired up again. But these oil companies are going, yeah, right. So it's going to take years to do that. We're going to be 4 years in and risk Trump being or the new president coming in, or if that's a new party, whatever. And then the new president comes in and goes, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that Keystone thing, because environmentally it doesn't make sense. So I'm not optimistic about it. I think it would be awesome. And I'm excited that Trump says, yes, day one, we're going to do it. But we have to pay attention and say, okay, let's not get too excited, because are they going to be able to pull it off? Not so sure. I mean, I think it's 850 million barrels a day once it gets fired up. So it is something that we want. It would be huge for Canada and Alberta specifically, but Canada overall for sure. But I just don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off based on what I'm seeing.
It's a good point.
Down.
It's a really good point, Patrick, because even though he clears the way for it, that doesn't necessarily mean at all that someone's still got to build this thing. And I don't know, and I don't know enough about it, so maybe someone could put it in the comments, or maybe Patrick, but how long is it going to take for them to finish? Because if they could get it done in, say, a couple of years, then they have what it takes. But if it's going to be an 8 or 10-year project, then you're right. There's quite a bit of risk in there, and they've already wasted hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars. Will they do more? Who knows?
Yeah, so the window of time is definitely years, but there's two aspects to it. Number one, getting it going again, getting it put back together. I mean, some of it has been repurposed for water, for example. So there's a lot of work to be done to get it fired up. But let's just say that takes 3 or 4 years. Maybe they can get it done in 4 years and at least get something flowing through that pipeline. But then ultimately, if a new president comes in that isn't on side with it, they shut it down again. So there's a lot of risk in terms of capital. And, some of these oil companies, even the big oil companies who have deep pockets, are, they're not stupid. They're not the government. They're not going to put billions into it at the risk of losing that and having it shut down again. That's part one of it. And then the second part of it is that the other risk that is happening is that we look at it and say, it's a pipeline, it gets fired up, it gets going. And yeah, let's say it gets online totally in the 4 or 5 years, but then it's an ongoing thing. And then think about the headwinds that they're going to be facing if this whole climate change and environmental and all the things that go on, if they're going to be facing those headwinds and constantly dealing with the legal ramifications of fighting fire in court, spending billions on doing that. Like I say, it's really messy, so it'll be interesting to see what happens, and we won't know anything about that until probably well into 2025. I remain hopeful, but I'm not optimistic.
Now, all of this, Patrick, is having an impact on the U.S. dollar, strengthening it, therefore weakening the Canadian dollar, so to speak. And you're kind of seeing that. I mean, just recently here, we've kind of come down. This is an interesting 1-year chart. Went as high as 76 cents on the dollar, now down to 71 cents on the dollar. So interesting. Now, this could, assuming no major tariffs, this could help our exports to the U.S. But the tariffs have an impact on that.
Well, there's a real challenge that we face. So Carolyn Rogers, the assistant director or whatever she is of Bank of Canada, I think she's awesome. I think that she should be actually, lead that way. But anyways, that's a different conversation. She said a long time ago, in case of emergency, break glass. It's time to break glass. That's all about productivity and how Canada isn't productive. So that's one part of her conversation. Secondly, in an interview that she sat down with, we look at this and what do we do? So the Bank of Canada only has control over variable rates. They set their rate. They don't have any control over, of course, the bond yields. And bond yields are on the rise. So fixed rates are going up. We need, and people want, the variable rate to come down. But there's a challenge with all of that because, oh man, it gets so convoluted. Now we have the HST GST break, which is going to cost billions of dollars, number one, but arguably it's going to put more capital into the market, which will in fact create some inflation. Now the Bank of Canada looks at what's going on economically and says, can we lower rates? We're at risk of creating inflation. So we start to look and say, are they going to lower rates in December? Before it was pretty much a lock-in in most people's opinion that it was going to be 50 basis points. That's not going to happen now. So we most believe. I don't know what's going to happen, to be honest with you, because here's the other side of that issue, which is something Carolyn Rogers also said, is we know that if they lower rates, it will in fact weaken the Canadian dollar. Her comment was straight up, we have room to do that. Like they will sacrifice the Canadian dollar, because here's where they're between a rock and a hard place. If they leave rates where they are, real estate will continue to be slow. The economy will continue to be slow. And so we suffer economically. But if they lower rates, then we have another issue, which is that the Canadian dollar gets weaker against the US dollar. A lot of our goods come out of the US, which means that we're paying more for it. So then we have inflation on that side of the equation because of the weak dollar, given that we're bringing in US goods. So they are literally between a rock and a hard place. I don't know what they're going to do. I doubt if they know what they're going to do. They're always looking at data, but it gets really complex. And don't, this $250 or whatever it translates to. I know it's like almost insulting to think that this, and what they gave us a GST HST break on, is like crazy. Like, don't even get me going. But the point is this: it's going to literally bring more capital liquidity into the market, which will in fact impact inflation. And that's why the Bank of Canada is going, yeah, I don't know if we'll be lowering rates 50 basis points, because of what the move was that our Trudeau government trying to buy votes, HST, GST.
That's what I was good. That's what I was going to say. That's exactly what this is. This is just like this is a vote grabbing tactic, and it's interesting because you talk to the average person and they know that's what's happening. They're like, oh yeah, there you go. He's just trying to buy our votes again. It's like it's just so transparent.
Yes. So these are the things that we have to look at. So what does this mean for us? Again, is that, with an uncertain economy comes a lot of different opportunities. But again, you have to get out, look for them, make sure you got the right people on your team. I am so right now, in my view of the world, this is not investing or financial advice. We cannot afford to keep our money in a bank. And so, yes, you need some liquidity, but at the end of the day, we are losing buying power quickly. And, I use that example. If you got 100 grand in the bank, in 12 months from now, you're about $85,000 of buying power. And so this is about wealth and capital preservation. Fiat currency is definitely decoupling. We don't know the speed of which it will decouple, but we have to keep our money working. So for those of you who are really understanding some of these dynamics, look at the opportunities that real estate is presenting, get into those hard assets, and invest your capital. That's really it. Take advantage of the opportunities. Don't get shut down by this and let the whole fear-mongering headlines shut you down. So if you like these episodes and you want to learn more about what's going on with real estate in Canada, investing in real estate, and understanding how to invest in real estate the right way, head on down to the descriptions below. Follow those links.